At least there was nothing confusing about fishing. He had been doing this for 20-some years, as he would tell any interested passer-by who might stop to get a fishing report. He changed baits from time to time, changed hook sizes, rigs. There was always some new gimmick at Big Jim's bait and tackle that he went for. But this did not change. Standing at the ocean's edge, waiting, hoping, this was always the same. Becky hadn't left. She was still right there. She was tempted by the rowdy laughter of her siblings and her own kids back in the house, and she turned her head every now and then to catch the racket. But this was pretty special. One-on-one with anybody is always hard to pull off in a big family, especially a close one, and this was her dad. Becky could tell something big was bothering him, but even when he was in a great mood, the fishing conversation went about the same. They had their own little dialect. She knew that he'd get around to letting her know what had him so gloomy. They smiled at each other. "Can you hold this?" Rod said, gesturing with the pole. "I need to get some fresh water for the bait." She asked anyway. "Want me to get it?" "No, that's fine," he answered. "It'll just take me a second." She knew the drill. She moved over to her dad and received the rod into both her hands. This was probably the 1,000th time she'd done this. Rod tipped out the spare bucket, turning the white sand underneath it temporarily dark, and headed down to the nearby water. Once the pail was full of seawater, he lugged it awkwardly back up the beach. As he poured the fresh, oxygen-rich water over his captives, Becky stomped her foot down on the sand. "Whoa!" Rob shot a look over at her and watched the fishing rod arc itself into an inverted U shape. "Whoa!" Becky yelled again, this time more apprehensively. A moment later, she was dancing on the balls of her feet and being dragged down to the ocean, accelerating forward with the rod still firmly in her grasp. "Dad! Dad!" she shouted over her shoulder. Rob dropped the bucket and ran to intercept her. He came up behind her in a sort of straitjacket embrace. They slowed down considerably, but the awkwardness of their stance still let them be jerked forward. Take it, Becky pleaded. Rod locked both of his arms onto the rod, and Becky slipped underneath them. The next jolt transferred directly to his shoulders and made him fold to absorb it. This is big, whatever it is, he thought to himself. Big. He put his fingers on the small triangle of plastic sitting on the top of the reel and twisted it slowly, counterclockwise, lessening the drag. At once, the fishing line whined out of the reel and the rod eased into a less dramatic arc. While relaxing the tension on the line kept the fish from breaking it, now it played off the spool quickly, like a kite shooting up into the sky. At this rate, it would play out down to the last knot on a barren reel. He would have to tighten the drag again before he ran out. There was no other choice. "Why don't I have heavier line on? This thing's going to snap it." Clockwise went the small white triangle, and again the rod bowed down, and again Rob bent forward. And then it stopped. Whatever it was just stopped way out there somewhere. There was no more pulling strong enough to strip line. There was no retreat. Man and unknown creature were frozen in place, as though eyeing each other through the surface of the sea. The line loosened suddenly, causing Rob to stagger and almost lose his balance. The rod came straight back to attention, shedding all of its curve. The fish was running in toward him.